The Growth Happens Dawn to Dusk podcast with Matt Devitt. He talks with people about their journey, where they succeeded and failed, to help others on their quest. We're all on a journey that starts and ends every day. This is when we grow, between dawn and dusk. And now, your host, Matt Devitt.
Welcome to the Growth Happens Dawn to Dusk podcast, where I will be speaking with awesome people about their journey and sharing their perspective. I'm super excited to kick off my podcast with Aaron Reichert. Aaron is a fantastic artist of sizable black and white portraits from New Orleans. We discuss his view on the business of art, setting time to do work, and how a hobby, became more than a hobby. Enjoy. Hey, I just wanted to start recording because if I forget, I'm sure that will more than likely happen.
Oh, yeah,
but
no,
I completely agree. I mean, I was playing outside yesterday with my daughter, doing the whole tobogganing kind of stuff up around here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take her to daycare this morning and it's like 5 degrees out. I'm like, what? I'm like, I could handle, 20, 25, but no, I agree. Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
Just one. So just a daughter. She just turned 2. So
oh, sweet. My sister has a kid that's about that age.
Okay.
Actually, Cliff has a kid about that age. A lot of people I know have 2-year-olds at present.
Yeah, I think we all put it on the back burner until we were just like, I think we should do something about this. So
yeah, I hear you, man.
No,
I never did get around to that.
There's always time.
I suppose.
There's always time, as they say. So. But no, I just wanted to say definitely thanks, man. I mean, I'm looking forward to starting this this little podcasting journey out on my own. It's a way for me to kind of scratch a kind of creative itch, and my creativity is definitely not in the same realm as yours. I can barely pull off stick figures with my daughter with crayons. So I'm just trying to find something that might work for me. So.
Yeah, well, I was just very pleased to hear. I'm always happy when people have are just creating anything. It's just the effort to make anything, I think, is laudable, because it's easy to not do it. It's easy there's 10,000 legitimate excuses not to do things, and so when people sort of insist on doing something anyway, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, so when you come up with those, I mean, you act in an awesome, creative sphere, that you've created on your own for just your artwork, which I got to admit, I mean, since you had I believe it was Tommy Lee Jones that was up in the front office from way back in the day in high school.
I forgot about that.
I don't know why, but for some reason,
painting.
Yeah, I didn't know it was unfinished, but I mean, it's for some reason that just that style and the fact that you've been able to, maybe mastered isn't the right word. I don't know how you feel about that, but you've continued to refine,
Sure.
That style that I saw there. I mean, I found awesome. So, when you're talking about starting something and all the excuses, I mean, I'm sure you've come into this. So how do you get yourself over that hump?
Well, honestly, I just got tired of it. I got tired of being fearful and doubting and you naysay yourself, and there's plenty of people that naysay you, even if it's not necessarily like they're mean about it, but just little comments that kind of take the wind out of your sails or whatever, especially when you're doing artwork and stuff. Well, anything that's personal, it's easy to, you want to protect yourself, right? Like you want to protect that little ego. So it's very easy to be derailed. But anyway, my point is just at a certain point with a lot of things, there comes a morning where I just am like, oh, to hell with it. I'm sick of being afraid of this thing. So I'm going to do something today. In one degree or another, that's really the best I can say is that, I just get tired of being, at a certain point of being doubtful and fearful, and you just kind of take the jump, whatever they say, take the plunge.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like when you look at the the balance of scales, it's almost the if you were to weigh pain, for lack of a better word, the pain of not doing something starts to outweigh the potential pain you might get from, like you said, the slings and arrows that come from people's comments.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and sometimes just the sheer passage of time, this is helpful. It's like a wake-up call. And when you realize that, oh shoot, time actually is passing, and oh shoot, I don't have, all the time in the world, and this isn't going to just happen on its own, kind of thing. But I should also add that that's, you never know exactly when is the significant thing, like in your own personal history. I mean, I suppose there are certain things like the birth of a child and a marriage or whatever, where it's obvious, yes, okay, this is a big crossroads, which is why so much is made of it. But oftentimes, the crossroads that you come to are not really apparent, You just have to kind of act on faith, and then maybe looking back, you can say, oh, that thing that happened, that kind of changed everything, So my point is simply that, making that decision to act might, you may fall on your face, and it's not necessarily going to be like a success. But if you do that enough, I feel like eventually, success happens, or, personal success anyway, which is what really matters, of course. So,
no, that does make a lot of sense. And one of the items I've been thinking about as far as trying to structure, how this podcast goes is, as you talked about the journey itself and the ups and downs that comes from it. So looking back on yourself, when you bring up these experiences or, the potential failures that come from them, I mean, do you have one that comes to mind where, at the time it was not a, sunshine and rainbows kind of experience, but, having distance, physical time and potentially even physical distance from it, you found that it actually provided so much more for you to work with in the future?
Oh, for sure. And that's, I have an example I always bring up, but that is such a crucial point. I feel like with any kind of endeavor is to weather those setbacks. Of course, I mean, it's simplistic, obviously, but it does not feel simplistic when it's you in the midst of it. But like, for instance, I always think of this time when I had just started I had a lot of work that I had just been doing kind of as a hobby, right? And I just decided that I would take a shot and see how far I could get with showing it, and whether it would have any, whether it would go anywhere, professionally, if anyone would buy these things. So I went out to the gallery district in New Orleans, one of them, and I just had a CD with a graphic on it, and I went into different galleries and gave it to really probably only maybe 8 of the galleries, which I should have been better about. I should have given it to all of them, but I was, insecure and felt foolish, and so I only gave it to 8. But anyway, I got a call back a couple of days later from one or two of them, and one of them I couldn't quite believe because it was such a fancy place. So I went in there and I showed them my work, and they expressed a sort of like tentative interest, being that I was completely unknown and, didn't have a master's in art or anything like that, but they liked it enough. So they put me on the wall in the back of the gallery in basically their storage room. And the idea was that, if they had clients that liked, portraits and things, that they would say, oh, maybe you'd be interested in this, maybe, So it wasn't exactly like front and center, huge exposure, but I was happy to have it because I was so impressed with the gallery. Anyway, the gallery it didn't really go anywhere, and it ended up getting kind of derailed by this other opportunity that came up where a fellow approached me and said, hey, we'd like to do a show. We'd like to do a solo show for you. And I said, well, let's talk about it. It sounds cool. And the next day, he put out this email to like everybody in town and all over the country, because he knew all these people, saying he was going to do this big solo show. And of course, one of the recipients was the owner of the gallery where I just started showing my work. And I found out, I got a call from them, and they were very terse, and they said, well, I guess you found somebody else to show your work. So I guess maybe you should come and get the paintings that you have here. And I was so alarmed because I said, no, this guy, he just kind of went ahead and did this thing. And he said we're going to talk, but he just made this decision, and I'll tell him to cancel it. And they said, no. And so I was just like, oh, dude, I just lost this amazing gallery, and it's so fancy.
Yep.
In this great part of town with this other guy who I don't even know. And who knows what this is going to be. But in hindsight, I'm so glad that happened, because it led to other things down the road. And because I was no longer with the fancy gallery, I was free to take these things. See, a lot of galleries, get in there and then they just they want everything, every decision you make to go through them. I mean, it can be that way. And when you're starting, you're just so grateful to have somebody making you money that you just go along with it, and you can become very kind of cowed about, protesting it all, or whatever you say, do whatever you like. So I'm so glad that one didn't work out, because I could have potentially just been there and stunted, and they wouldn't have really shown the work very much, and I probably would have just gotten frustrated and just gotten out of it at a certain point. But at the time, you don't see that. I mean, that was years ago. So.
Yeah, I completely. Yeah, I mean that's an awesome epitome of, at the time, you're dealing with, just the discomfort of, like you said, I mean, you have to work through the gallery, and so there's a level of security that probably comes with that. And but at the same time, if you want the freedom that it sounds like you enjoy to kind of not really come and go as you please, it's not going to be a great way to phrase it, but at least where you can put more of your whole thumbprint on the decision. Definitely seems like it's paid off by, basically having this oops from an email way back in the day, opened up those doors to where you could kind of, really, implant your name on that stuff.
Yeah, it's true. I think you have to follow what feels right too, but it's kind of hard to do that when you are just getting by, of course, right? So you got to I don't know, I felt from the very beginning I had to get past just getting by as soon as I could, because it just gets easier the more leverage you feel you have. And so when you're first starting, that phase can go on indefinitely. That phase of dependence can go on indefinitely if you don't, find some way to create a little bit of professional leverage. And I actually don't really know the answer to that exactly, except to just keep it in your mind that you will ask for raises every so often, kind of thing. Not to simply just take what is given to you, especially if it's a strain, especially if you're like, my God, I can barely pay my bills with this amount that I'm making. So I don't know.
No, it makes sense. There was there's a statement a while back. I can't remember if I was read or if it was at a meeting I was in, where somebody was talking about, or sorry, they actually asked the question to the group of, what's the difference between money and air? And the answer he gave the group was, you don't think about either one of them until they start to run out.
Yeah.
And I found that to be very, very interesting, because as much as, there's the capitalist side of things and so on and so forth, but I mean, until, and it sounds like from your perspective, until you can really get your head above water and start to look around and see what's going on, it's you've created all this other difficulty in addition to, creating your end product, whatever that might be, and whatever endeavor you're going into.
Yeah. Well, so I met. Oh.
No, go.
There's this very colorful guy that I met at one point in New Orleans, and he's not alive anymore, but he was an interesting fellow that happened to live next door to me. And one point, he worked in what did he do exactly? He sold high-end antique paintings, I don't even know what you would say exactly, but they were like Picassos and stuff to very wealthy clients and everything. And
Okay.
anyway, at one point he said to me, if you find yourself in a slump, raise your prices. And then he kind of gives a pause and he says, that's a little free advice. Like, okay, but the point is, I think well taken, because in art, you are so insecure and you're always worried, like, is anyone really going to, buy this? You get really insecure when you put a price tag on this thing you've made, and you think, is anyone really going to spend this much money? Like, and you just have to have that confidence, like, all right, well, if they don't, maybe I should just push the price up and then they'll buy it, damn it, or whatever. So I don't know.
It's a very interesting idea as far as like when you kind of think about luxury items, right? It's like, what's the difference between like a duffel bag and a Coach purse? Now, full disclosure, obviously I'm a guy and I have no idea what the difference actually is. So to me, like, I couldn't tell the difference in pricing between those two, but they're not really targeting me, right?
Yeah.
And so it's some pretty interesting advice that your friend definitely gave you. Is that so within I'll say the art industry is this huge over-encompassing thing, but in the part of the industry that you're in, is that something that has kind of always been there since you've been working within that industry, as far as like trying to like I guess like establish price and stuff like that, or has there really been something that's changed as far as with kind of like that pricing interface or that interaction that takes place?
Well, the best thing about being with a gallery is that they are interested in making money too, right? So you kind of have like a person to bounce to bounce the business off of, and they can kind of tell you, well, this sort of work, without you having to be there and be the business yourself. They can say, well, this work is getting a lot of attention. This work isn't getting as much attention. And to a certain degree, you can, sort of steer and strategize. Okay, well, if this work is getting good attention, then perhaps it would be good from a financial standpoint to do more of that or to develop that. And also, they are going to want to try to get you and themselves, more money for what you do. So, there's constantly, I feel like, an assessment of where you're at and where you'd like to go financially. But what's nice is that once you have a little bit of a track record, like for instance, every time there comes a point where I think, well, maybe I'll adjust my prices and maybe push this up a little more. And for about, I don't know, for a period of time afterwards anyway, you are pretty insecure, at least I am, like, okay, things are expensive, more expensive now. Will people still buy them? And then once you make a few sales, you realize, okay, good. All right, well, this is great. All right. It's like I just got a nice little raise.
Right.
So once you have that, then you don't have to worry about your prices anymore, is what I'm saying. Like if somebody comes to you and wants to buy a painting, it's like, okay, well, the paintings are this much. What are you thinking? This is how much they cost. You can basically take it or leave it. But when you're first starting, it's kind of like you have to just sort of say, well, this much. What do you think?
Right, in the most confident, wishy-washy kind of way that you can do it from.
Own it
right,
best you can.
Yeah.
And but once you have a few that go, then you're good, because you're like, all right, this is what they sell for now, and whether you buy it or not, somebody else will. And I don't know.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you're effectively creating a floor for which you can work off from. So with galleries in general, like so when I hear gallery from you talking about it, to me it sounds similar to, let's say, like an agency or something of that nature, or like if I was a consultant, somebody that could share my name out there so I could do engineering work or something like that. How do you go about evaluating just a gallery, just to make sure? Because I like the idea that you bring up that you're both business partners, but like, how do you kind of do that to make sure you're at least aligned with each other?
Well, ideally, you would be like, the best experiences I've had with galleries have come through placement through other artists that I respect, basically like being referred,
Okay.
So like the gallery I'm in now, I had several references. I mean, I've got 3 galleries right now, but the one I'm in locally here, there were like 3 references from people that I knew, one of which he would shown there for like at least, I think, 20 years or more. So they had a heck of a lot of experience. And plus, I knew the gallery because it's absolutely gorgeous, right in the French Quarter, and it's hard to miss, if you.
What's the name of the gallery?
That one's Angela King Gallery.
Okay.
It's right on Royal Street in the French Quarter. I mean, absolutely gorgeous and beautiful part of town. And I mean, I knew about the gallery, basically as soon as I moved here, just from riding by one time. And anyway, so I knew damn well that was a place I would love to be in.
Right.
And so there's that. When you're local, it's kind of easier. But when you're looking at things like regionally, the 2 regional galleries I'm in right now, well, actually one I did just find on my own, but the other one I was referred to them, So it's just kind of what I sort of do is if it's a totally cold situation and you don't really know the gallery, I always start off kind of sending them 2 pieces, see how they do. If they can sell the 2 pieces or even one, then maybe I'll send them another 2, and just kind of, proceed with a bit of caution because sometimes you do get burned, but just that's basically it. And if it doesn't feel right, you just pull back and move on.
And so a lot of those contracts that you end up having with the gallery, I'm assuming it's really piece by piece. Well, I guess, it depends on how creative they want to get with the contract and the arrangement between everybody. Could you do something over like a duration of time as well, and then also, or so many pieces or something of that nature?
Yeah, you could. It's all, you can work particulars out, like obviously with any contract or whatever, but it's pretty standard.
How
like
imaginative do you want to get?
Yeah, the business is almost totally standard. It's very unusual for at least the business and the percentage to be like some surprise. So then it's just a question of how many pieces, and
right.
That's really it. Yeah,
because I know so do you feel that you're now being represented in galleries, like you've kind of made it to a level that you're happy with? And part of this, I want to kind of bring it back to how did you get started into this? So, you and I have known each other when in high school, because that's when I finally moved back to Michigan. And you'd been in Michigan most of your life, well, actually all of your life up until that point, I believe. And so we met each other through mutual friends in high school and stuff like that. But how did you really get onto this path that has led you, up to the part of our discussion where we're talking about, evaluating galleries and things of that nature?
Oh, well, kind of like we said right at the beginning, where I'd come to a point, it's funny, each decade I sort of feel like, of my life, I feel like there's an evaluation that takes place whether I like it or not.
Okay.
Kind of face to face with, okay, a year passes and you notice it, but once those years add up to 10 damn years, a decade, they have a word for that, you think a little harder about what you're doing, and so through my 20s, I just wanted to, travel, and I lived in a couple of different places and tried them out and just took like service industry jobs and just got by. But all the while there was like this nagging sort of voice saying, well, I don't know that I want to be doing this for another 10 years kind of thing. So then I was around 28 or so when I moved to New Orleans, and I thought I'd get involved in film work, film production work, because I'd always sort of worked in entertainment up to that point. And it seemed like a viable option where you could actually make a good living and do interesting, unconventional stuff. So I tried that for a couple of years, but it didn't really suit me, the different things. I was kind of feeling quite anxious and having a lot of conversations with family about my direction and not really sure what was going to happen. And without really planning on, I never said to myself, well, what about art? I could just go and do that. Like, that never happened. I just started doing art kind of as a distraction from like these bigger problems when I would have time off from film, which would happen a lot, where you work like crazy for several weeks and then you don't work at all and you're biting your nails wondering when the hell you're going to work again. And so also to kind of stave off that anxiety, I just started I got into the Civil War and I started doing all these portraits of, figures from the Civil War and especially Lincoln and stuff, just as a little hobby. And then suddenly I had like 20 of these things and we had them hung up all over this house I lived in with 4 other people in New Orleans. And somebody happened to come by one night that I didn't even know, who was a friend of a friend, and said, hey, my buddy has a gallery and, he'll probably give you a show if you bring this stuff to him. And so that's when I thought, oh, maybe I should start showing this around. And actually the guy he mentioned was the guy who eventually did give me a show.
Okay.
Kind of screwed everything up for a minute, but actually did, in the end, kind of free me from a situation that probably wouldn't have been great in the long run. Anyway, that's sort of how it happened. I was just doing something as a hobby, kind of avoiding the bigger problems in my life and doing this other stuff. And then before I knew it, I had a bunch of this stuff. And I always just thought at the time, well, maybe I could make a little bit of extra money on the side kind of thing doing this. That's really all I thought at the time.
Right.
Because coming from where we came from, I don't know anybody who made a living in art. Like that was like unheard of. I mean, did you know anybody anybody's parents that were artists?
No, I mean, and kind of when you pose the question to me, it's like definitely nobody that would fall into the professional realm when it came to art. I mean, I knew some people that played, some musical instruments and things like that, but I feel that's different than, the comparison you're trying to draw. And so, no, I mean, I didn't, well, I mean, I had kind of an eclectic group of friends. I think we both kind of did in our own way, but nobody had parents where they were talking about such and such at a gallery or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, as I think about it, I can't think of one gallery that I even know in Michigan. Like,
agreed.
Shoot, I hear Detroit is getting, very artsy, but I don't know the scene there at all, so I can't say exactly. But yeah, it just seemed like, very unrealistic. But now, if I could talk to anybody that was like just starting out, now it's like I know tons of people that make their living and make actually a damn good living. Some of them, holy cow, doing art. So it is totally viable if you go that way. It can be very hard to start. Is the only trouble. And I've heard over and over again that actually, I don't know how it goes. Anyway, they would say like, well, actually, being an artist is actually kind of an old person's profession because it just kind of gets easier as you get older. You do all this, you establish yourself and do all this really kind of scary stuff in your younger years. But ideally, once you get your foot in the door, you just kind of keep doing it. And, with time, people come to know you. And it just, you get more clients built up and then your exposure grows. And ideally into your old age, you are actually then able to do quite well, which seems to be the case with some of the artists I know that are, in their 60s and 70s, like that are, doing quite well. So
it's an interesting.
Yes, it is viable. Viable lifestyle.
Well, it's kind of interesting the way you lay it out with the generational portion, because really, I mean, you're talking about, personal brand, or even a way I think about it, as like engineering and project work. It's trust. It's like in your 20s, you're trying to build up brand or trust or whatever you might want to call it, and then hopefully by the time you get 30, 40, something of that nature, now you've moved past the whole, who's this guy? What's she do? What do I,
Mm-hmm.
and now you've got a brand or trust. And then, like you said, once your foot's in the door, you just kind of repeat, rinse and
Yeah.
repeat from there. So in order to get, let's say, to just the point of getting your foot in the door or even beyond, what do you think is more important? Is it talent? Is it hard work, or just the attitude of the person trying to get to that point?
Um, let's see. Obviously, I think all of them are important, but then of course, it's easy, I often joke that the stuff I see in the galleries that I like the least is the stuff that just flies off the wall. So I'm not so sure talent, I mean, talent is perhaps to say someone has talent is a matter of opinion, right? So,
Fair.
I don't know. I mean, obviously there's certain things you look at and it's like, oh yeah, that guy's clearly talented, but sellability is, I guess, sort of its own thing. But I would say basically it's like a discipline thing that I think is the most important. If you're just talking about, I'm not talking about being an artist because I think that's
Mm-hmm.
different than making your living in art.
Okay.
Because there are people that are really just sort of like business people
Mm-hmm.
who have some sort of artistic thing they can do and maybe don't have much talent, but are very good at business and can do very well, financially in art. And then conversely, of course, everybody knows about, and this is so much the case, like people that are vastly talented and such total artists,
Mm-hmm.
and don't make hardly any money because
Right.
it's just so not how they're made, they'll sell things for so little that are brilliant, they're so insecure about money or they don't, it just doesn't process or whatever. So, but I would say if you're just trying to, if you're just trying to make a living and have like a financial success in art, I would say it'd be the same as any business where you just have to be disciplined about every day, working on it and have your professional goals and, tend to them, send thank you notes, check in with people, communicate, all that stuff that's important in business. The only difference is that your product is some sort of artistic thing,
So you brought
So,
up thank you notes. Have you found that to be, effective in the world of emojis and texting and things of that nature?
oh, I believe they are. I don't know. I mean, thank you notes could be a thank you email or
Right.
something like that. But I mean, to me, I like the tactile uh, thing that exists in the real world. But I mean, I don't go crazy with it, but I just feel like little things that are easily not done, I believe are important because heck, I mean, if I ever get anything in the mail, like a little note, that's great. It makes you feel really good. Like I
Yeah.
figured that other people would would as well, and ultimately too, it's you got to remember that everybody you're working with is a person, like,
Right.
and it matters to people to have little thoughtful things done for them, and so you know
No, I
you don't want to
completely agree.
neglect that.
It's nice to follow it up because it makes the interaction seem less transactional and more of an
Yeah, yeah,
actual
and
interaction.
I mean, it does. It's so vital too. Like, I mean, because it's all part of like when anything sells and somebody buys something I do, that allows me then to do more things and keeps me, alive.
Keeps
So
the
it
engine
really am
going.
very grateful when people, uh, invest in me, and then I can, continue to do this. And so yeah, it's really helpful, and it inspires me, like, to do more things. Like, okay, great, that worked out well. So now I'm going to do this a whole bunch of new stuff. But it's a good feeling.
With
So
the business portion that you were talking about, as far as the discipline, what kind of discipline do you bring to, that you found really successful within yourself Is it things that you do, every morning, or are they just like, what are some of those disciplines that you see that have really created a lot of value?
Well, professionally, just I find that I try to work every day, every day basically, because I don't have, like I'm not going to a job every day or whatever. I I have to assign myself, essentially working hours, and I'll admit it's taken a few years to sort of figure out how that works. But for me, there's like a period of time. It's usually around the middle of the day where I will set that time aside and go into the studio and work. And sometimes honestly, I'll only be in there for an hour and a half or something. Just if that's all I feel that day, then that's all I'll do. That's not often. I typically work a good 4 to 5 hours a day, which I find to be a good amount of time to really focus and do good work. And sometimes if you stay longer than that, it can be not so good or whatever. But in general, that's about the time. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. But just to every day go in and work on it, I think is really important. But it's also really important, especially when you're trying to get established, to have some sort of list or some sort of time deadline where you deal with things you really don't want to deal with, like I don't know, applying to art shows or applying to galleries or whatever. You gotta do those things in a timely manner. And when somebody responds, but you got to make yourself reply, that day. That's what I believe anyway.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, there's been times over the years where I've had people, I've actually gotten them, they'll ask me about getting in somewhere, and I'll say, hey, look, there's a gallery that I think would be interested in your work. You send them your work. And oftentimes they don't do it. Or like I'll check in with them a week later and I'll ask if they've done it, and they're like, oh, no, I haven't done that yet. Or whatever, somebody will be interested in their work and say, oh yeah, have them send me images. Here's a gallery saying, send me images. And why would you send the damn images? Oh, I will. And it's like, dude, this is not not how you get places, with this. You have to actually do things and talk to people. But
no, that makes complete sense. I mean, you have to, it's interesting, the way you bring it up is if we hadn't been talking about art, but what you described is effectively how you're effective at anything, right? Like even when you're in an office to a certain extent, like I don't like to do emails sometimes, but I batch them together. So at least I've got, a couple hours, at different points of the day, to total a couple of hours. And that's when I do it. I just try to hammer as many out as possible. You figure out which ones take more time. You set those to the side for projects and you go forward. And then that kind of opens up my ability to, then do something fun, and whatever that is in quotations for fun, but now that you've done the stuff, you've effectively made the sausage, as they say. Now you can actually go and do the part of the job that you truly enjoy. And I think that's a really good point that you bring up, that you have to set that time aside, and even when you don't want to do it. So even like the fun portion doesn't always feel that way, but you have to do it. It's all about just time under tension, for lack of a better word. The more you do that, the more you get used to it. And then the less it feels like, in the examples you bring up of like, oh my God, I've got to get in touch with this person. If you're already kind of in the motion of doing it, like you have that momentum, it just seems like it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like definitely the work I do is very much a business. It just happens that the business is, an art product, but it could be anything,
Do you find people don't give your business the same respect they would like a Silicon startup, or Silicon Valley startup or something of that nature, or like like a brick and mortar kind of business?
I don't know. Perhaps the nice thing is that because most of the business, as far as like the actual sales and stuff, because I mean, most of that goes through the gallery. So
okay,
I don't really hear about the flaky clients or the, people that waste their time and all that. And the funny thing is, I joke like all I hear is nice things, like and I know there's like one time I was in the gallery and I was sitting there and somebody had this work in the gallery that's really beautiful portraiture that's really colorful, and I was sitting there and they had done this painting of Einstein, and this couple was looking at it, and then the gallerist said, "Oh, we also have this other painting of Einstein that I had done in black and white." And the woman said, like, "Yeah, but I don't like that one." And and that's in terms of criticism, pretty mild, right? But the point is that it's basically, for as much as I know about how people respond to stuff, I can just live in this fantasy world where everybody loves it because they're not going to tell me these kind of things, or I'm sure much worse things. So in that sense, I'm not really living in reality, but it's pretty nice.
Right.
Not hearing
nice
the bad.
Nice to have that level of shielding, I guess, which may work out pretty well because kind of as you talked about in the beginning, I mean, sometimes the hardest part is knowing that when you get into it, are you going to be faced with a lot of those, hits to the ego? And so if there's ways you can kind of put some of those automatic defenses in there to where you're like, well, I know they're coming in, but I don't have to deal with them all that often. So that might not be a bad thing either, especially when they're something as simple and, like you said, benign as that example. That's not too terribly bad. But if you get 1,000 of those, that could be pretty harsh.
Yeah. Well, I always think about, there was a time when I was first starting, I got this email, or I was out with some friends and some of their friends were there. Okay. And some of their friends, this woman I met that evening said, "Oh, you're an artist. You should talk to my friend who has a gallery, and you'd probably really like this." So, and at that point I thought, okay, anything. And so I reached out to this person, and he was very into the work, and we exchanged a bunch of emails, and he said, "Bring over as many paintings as you can. I really want to see these." And so I loaded up my little sedan they were smaller than the paintings, and I brought him, I think, like 20 paintings, and I pull up in front of his gallery, and he had like this courtyard in this old New Orleans home that was part of it was a gallery. It was really neat. He said, "Oh wow, look at that. Okay, so just set these up, around this courtyard." So I do, and with each one, he's like, "Wow, how do you do this? I've never seen anything like this." And everything's out, and we're sitting down in the middle of the courtyard, and he's just looking around and like, "I just can't believe this. These are beautiful. I can't sell any of these." And there's just like a moment. And I said, "You can't sell any of them? That's too bad." He says, "Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not the work. I think the work is great, but the reality is nobody buys portraits. I got a guy who does these marvelous portraits, and some of those paintings have been sitting in the gallery for years, and there's no one will touch them. I'm sorry, but I mean, do you do anything else?" And I said, "Well, no. And in fact, I don't even use color. Like, I do one thing." And so he was really nice, but I left, very deflated, thinking, well, and I feel like this was a crossroads moment, because I drove home thinking, well, okay, so I guess these won't sell, so I'll just do them for fun. They won't be something that makes money. And so my point is that I feel like if you're going to have something like this, I really feel like you have to be prepared for a total bust. Like, you have to love it that much that you will do it whether you make money or not, kind of thing, because that's the only thing that you will be willing to work hard enough to actually find success, and not just get burned out along the way. Like, again, I say success meaning you'll sell things, because obviously there's tons of different kinds of success, but everybody needs to, have an income, right? So that's important.
No, it makes sense too. I mean, that's a beautiful story, especially from a crossroads standpoint of you kind of looked at it and just came to grips with the point of, well, I like this. I'm going to keep doing it. So, okay.
Yeah, it'll just be a hobby. It'll be fun. And maybe I'll try again. And I did try again, and then it turned out that actually the thing that everybody I'd show to, they'd say, well, do you do anything in color? And I always got insecure, like, damn it. No, I don't do anything in color. Do you do anything that isn't portraits? No, I don't do anything that isn't portraits. But I tell you what, I think that ultimately that became a strength, because even though, by and large, people like color, by and large, people don't buy portraits. Some people do, and as long as there's some people that are really into black and white stuff and some people that are really into portraits, that's all you need. You don't need everybody who buys art. Because the other thing is, if you're doing other work that's very colorful and isn't portraiture, there's 10 bajillion people that are also doing that. So then you have the problem of becoming sort of lost in the mix. So I don't know. It just was, I think, just very lucky, for sure. But anyway, there's all these things you can't really know,
until after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also interesting when you talk about that. Like you saw it as a hobby, but you didn't really poke at it like a hobby. Somebody who kind of picked it up and did it for a little bit. And I'm sure that might have been the way it felt at the time, but the perception I get from looking at what you have done, this is something that even if it started as a hobby, you took it as a very serious hobby.
Oh, yeah.
Is that basically how you kind of moved forward with it? Was like, okay, well, if it's a hobby, I'm at least going to give it some level of effort to see what happens.
I wanted to take ownership with some creative project, or some creative direction. So I'd always enjoyed playing music, and I always enjoyed, doing portraiture. And I sort of made a decision that I would pursue the artistic stuff, and really develop that. And that would be the thing I would really try to run with. So what I learned was that when you are disciplined about that, you really progress, right? You could spend 10 years kind of noodling at something, and like I do on the guitar, and I haven't gotten any better at the guitar in 10 years. But if I decided I'm going to go out and, I really want to make this guitar my profession, so I would take, I'd get some lessons, I'd be practicing every day, and of course I'd be getting much better. So just the act of having, just the opportunity to work on this every day for several hours every day consistently over time, you will make progress and you will grow, and your work will start to go in different directions, just sort of organically, and perhaps more dramatically if you're, given to really shaking things up and changing things. But it takes on its own life just from going there every day and doing it. That's such an important thing, I think, with an artist or a musician or anything, is to remain active in it each day.
So it's kind of interesting when you talk about nobody liked portraits and nobody liked black and white. And then going to your Instagram page, I believe it's your most recent or one of the most recent. You have a black and white portrait that's it's the Four Seasons in Austin, correct?
Yeah.
So kind of an interesting, somebody in a courtyard saying, no, ain't going to happen. And now you have a piece in full display in a Four Seasons, a very, well-known and reputable hotel, in the Austin area. Does it kind of make it feel like, I don't want to say things have come all the way around to the beginning, but what kind of a level of accomplishment did that feel like when you could finally, have somebody, want to post it there, show it, and from where you came from the courtyard?
Well, honestly, funny enough, when I found out that they went to the Four Seasons, I said, what is the Four Seasons? I've heard of that. Is that like, what is that? And they said, Aaron, Four Seasons. It's like, it's a big deal. And I said, okay. and it was beautiful when I went there. And yeah, I am proud of that, and it's really, it's it's a real compliment, like to the work. But I think the person who said, no one buys portraits, I think had I shown there, no one would have bought them, like I think especially with art, so much is, like any business, they say, the location of what you're trying to do, So I could have given them work like I have now, and like my new work that sells very well in my location now, and he probably wouldn't be able to sell it very well there because his gallery was small and quirky, and you weren't able to really get much distance on the work from the work. Whereas the place that I'm in now at Angela King Gallery in New Orleans it's like, there's just light flooding in, and it's got these beautiful tall ceilings and marble floors, and it's just, you put anything on the wall in there and it looks amazing. So that is, like, I can't overstate how important that is to have your work shown off well. The people that work there are wonderfully professional and attentive and all that. So it's just like that is so important. And they also, when you're talking about galleries, part of what you're looking for with the gallery is who comes to the gallery. Like what is their, oftentimes they'll have established clients that come to every opening, or at least are informed of every opening. And, who are these folks? And, basically that, like, the people that I would want to have knowing about my work and stuff. So, this place has been around for decades, like 30 years. They've been here a good long time. They've got a ton of clients, and they're right in the middle of a place where millions of people pass every year coming to the French Quarter. So the whole thing with this sale was, I believe one of their clients is a decorating firm that works with like the Four Seasons and other places. So, they never would have seen my work if I had been showing in even, say, a gallery right down the street if they weren't, connected to this actual design company. It's doubtful they would just have happened to walk in, So that's how that kind of thing happens.
Yeah,
which is why gallery placement is so important.
Yeah, and that's actually quite interesting. It's when and I'm glad you brought that up, because when I thought gallery, I kept thinking of the physical geographic location, but it's really like how much of a node is it to people coming and going, and who else do they know, and those connections that actually take place.
Yes, and they're the ones, pretty much every gallery will tell you, like, well, we just want you to do the work, bring it in, and we will handle all of the business, right? So it's actually quite nice, because the business, in terms of, how you sell art, can become quite a heavy burden. And it's not to say, like, every so often, I get clients that I will work with, but it's most of the time it's the galleries that are finding, the clients. And it is such a weight off, because meanwhile they're working behind the scenes, sending people reminders, taps on the shoulder, this painting you're interested in, whatever. So you don't have to worry about doing that, which would take up a lot of time. I wouldn't be adverse to doing that, but I don't miss doing that, like.
That's fair.
It's more time to do the things that I actually, am more interested in doing.
Play to your strengths, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't. I could enjoy talking to you all day long, but I want to be, respectful of your time, since I know you've got some dedicated time that's slotted out to do your craft. But how can people, follow your work? What are good ways to stay in touch with you, reach out? How can people find you on those magical interwebs that we have these days?
Well, I admit I am not as good about keeping up with that stuff, but I try to keep my website updated, which is just my name, AaronReichert.com. And then I have a Facebook, which I think I updated about once a year, a bunch of new stuff. And then I have my Instagram, which I do update more regularly, I guess. It's probably the one I update the most at this point. It's my Instagram page, but in terms of getting reminders, but most consistently it's just my website, and then my website has an email on there if anyone has any questions or whatever. But yeah, I admit I'm not terribly good with the social media stuff.
No,
one of the business tools that I don't use as well as I should, I suppose.
Completely understood, and I'll look to put some links to all of that stuff in the show notes so people can quickly reach over to you and stuff like that. But I really appreciate this time. I'm definitely going to make sure I reach out to you and stay in touch a little bit more than we have over the past years. And I definitely want to come down to that New Orleans area. You can show me around, and yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I haven't been down in that area in probably 10, 12 years, so I'll be really interested to see how it's changed.
Oh my God, it's changed so much. That's funny because that's basically when I moved here. It wasn't quite 12 years ago, but it was certainly 11. And boy, it's changed. Wow. So you must have come down either right before or right after Katrina, because it was
definitely a little ways before. It was it was like a business trip kind of deal when I first got started. Just down, passing through real quick, saw another facility that we were bringing online over in Alabama. And so, it was just, pretty close. So we went over and, did the Bourbon Street kind of deal, which don't get me wrong. I know that's probably a terrible representation to walk away from.
You got to do it.
But, you got to get that check in the box somewhere, right? So we did that, but no, I would definitely look forward to coming down and spending some more time in the French Quarter and actually with somebody that knew what they were talking about. So we'll definitely stay in touch throughout the time. Again, I really, really thank you for your time and being so open with the conversation.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to reconnect, man. I was touched that you reached out to me about this, so thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and when this gets released, I'll definitely let you know.
All right, sounds good. I look forward to it.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Take care of yourself.
Matt. Take care. Bye-bye.
Just simply wow. That was an awesome conversation with Aaron. I definitely invite you guys to check out his work. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes below. If you like this show, please leave a review, a like, 5 stars. It would mean a lot to me, especially with kicking off my new podcast. Give me a follow over at LinkedIn at Matt Devitt, as well as Twitter and Instagram at @DevittMatt. So until next time, keep growing on your journey from dawn till dusk.